Could have just peed on it.
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Ocean man, take me by the hand, lead me to the land that you understand.
Does she not love me?
Yes.
Aquaman is a strange movie, but I love it. Look at that, I already said the title of the video in the video.
He said it!
Aquaman released in late 2018 after some delays and reshoots, and with the shit show that was the theatrical cut of Justice League released in just a year prior, many were ready for this movie to fail and chalk it up as another L for the DCEU. But in a shocking turn of events, the movie was successful, like really successful. Not only did it receive positive reviews from both audiences and critics, but it was the first DCEU movie to break $1 billion. People had some very low expectations after sitting through this.
They said that you're a gay boy.
And after hearing about additional shooting, people just assumed it was going to be shit. Not to mention, this was the first official poster. It looks kind of like ass. It was a recipe for disaster, but it somehow came out a success. And even though I really enjoy this movie, I think it's strange and pretty weird, and at times it's goofy. But it pulls it off with such style that I'm like, hey, fuck it, I'm here for it. Now, I know some people don't like this movie, but I also don't care what they think. I really like it, but I can admit that it's a bit bonkers. When watching, I noticed things about it that I would either roll my eyes at in other movies, or there are things that are just generally pretty silly and goofy. And hell, there's actually some continuity errors from the theatrical cut Justice League and even the Snyder cut. And what I want to do is break down some of the stuff because I think it's pretty funny. Now, this won't be a typical review for me. It's actually going to be quite different. I'm just going to talk about a few different aspects of the movie and not really give an in-depth breakdown. I won't be splitting the review up into things that I liked and didn't like. Instead, I'm just going to talk about a bunch of stuff because I'll be the first to tell you this movie has issues, but I really enjoy it. And that's basically what this video will be, pointing out some of the weird aspects of this movie. But yet, at the end of the day, I really enjoy it. So with that out of the way, where do I start? I know.
All you care about is making money, you don't care about a fucking soul though.
Let's talk about the continuity errors and changes made from the 2017 Justice League and Snyder Cut to 2018's Aquaman. Now, in both the theatrical cut and Snyder cut Justice League, the Atlanteans use air bubbles to speak to each other. In the theatrical cut, Mera makes a bubble so she can talk to Arthur, and in the Snyder cut, we see that same scene and Volko using the air bubble too. But also in the Snyder cut, you can actually see Mera talking to the other Atlanteans, making like fish noises or some shit, and that's how they communicate when they're not using the bubble. But in the Aquaman movie, they don't do any of that, instead they just talk. Also, it's mentioned in Aquaman that only those of royal blood can breathe air, but in the Snyder cut, we actually see Atlantean guards get interrogated by Steppenwolf and they're breathing air. But let's look at Mera. Her look is completely different here. Not only is her outfit and hair different, but she doesn't have an accent anymore either. And the little backstory we got about her is actually changed. In the theatrical cut and Snyder cut, she explains to Arthur that her parents died in the war, and Queen Alanna took her in. But in Aquaman, her father is very much alive. In fact, he's a king. So her character was changed quite a bit. I guess they changed her outfit to look more attractive. I don't know. She looks alright, I guess.
Not really. I'm really into this pizza though.
Also in the Snyder cut, we see Volko, and his design is different too. He has long hair and is wearing armor, and he seems more stern when he's talking to Arthur. But in Aquaman, his hair is pulled back, no armor, he doesn't look rugged. In both versions of Justice League, Arthur does not like the Atlanteans, but he also has more anger towards his mother, and when talking to Mera, he speaks ill of her, because he thinks that she abandoned him. But in Aquaman, his anger is changed to where he's only upset at the Atlanteans, because they executed her for having him. This is told in a flashback when he was younger training with Volko, and also Arthur just tells his dad that in the beginning. Also, even Arthur himself has changed a bit here. In the theatrical cut of Justice League, he seems like a dick, he's stealing stuff and starting arguments with the other members. And in the Snyder cut, he's still kind of a dick, but he's much better at working with and interacting with others. And in the solo movie, he's more of a goofball at times. I figured he was going to lighten up after Justice League because he starts being a hero and whatnot, but there are times where he's just kind of a dunce. I've seen people compare him in this movie to Thor, and at times it does feel like that, with shitty one-liners that don't land, and coming off as just dumb in some scenes.
What?
Should we have written it down first?
I memorized it. Didn't you?
Oh yeah, totally.
What did you say?
Something trident.
It's weird because there are parts of this movie where he is actually pretty smart.
Marcus Agrippe. He was a great general, but he wasn't a king. Neither was Scipio.
You know all this stuff.
That was my pops. Made sure I knew my history.
And those are most of the changes and continuity errors that I saw. It's kind of funny how things like speaking with air bubbles and Atlanteans breathing air were changed. Leave a comment and let me know if there's any that I missed. Now let's move on to the next section.
If I ain't had so much to lose, I swear to God, I'll probably beat up and choke you. Nigga, this is that raw shit.
What I love about this movie is that it embraces the source material and doesn't care how silly it is or how funny it would look on screen. In interviews, James Wan said they wanted to embrace the comics and all their goofy stuff, and overall just have fun with it. Like, they're riding armored seahorses and sharks. They have an octopus playing drums while they fight to the death. Black Manta has a comically large helmet, but hey, since they are being comic accurate, that's what it would look like, right? This movie doesn't care how weird it all seems. They're just having fun with it, and for that, I respect it. I think the movie is at its best when it's not trying to be funny. What I mean is there are several one-liners and forced jokes that don't land at all, and I actually enjoy the movie more when it's not trying to make you laugh and instead just shows off its fun and kinda goofy lore and world. And I think this approach worked, because if it was super serious, it wouldn't have felt right. Although I know for some people it's kind of a turn-off and that's why they don't like the movie, because they think it's too dumb. But I saw it as entertaining as hell, and not to mention it's pulled off with such style and flair that only James Wan can deliver. At times it's also a very pretty movie. The world is very bright and colorful, and I see why he was upset when Aquaman didn't get nominated for Best Visual effects at the Oscars. Most of this movie is just CGI and special effects. It has over 2,000 visual effects shots. To put that into comparison, Avengers Endgame has nearly 2,500 and the Snyder Cut has over 2,700. Aquaman is shorter than both those movies, but has almost the same amount of special effects shots throughout. It really is a shame that it got snubbed at the Oscars, because a lot of work went into this, and it didn't even get nominated. I see why James Wan described the snub as a fucking disgrace. But back to the goofiness. Even with the forced jokes, I still think the movie is just overall fun to watch.
New age Jerry Heller, a scary fella. I hate your fucking name, every letter. I'm very fed up. You acting like an ordinary heifer.
Now, Aquaman is a pretty simple movie. Arthur has to return home to reclaim his place at the throne of Atlantis before his half-brother Orm unites the kingdoms and declares war on the surface world. And to prove he's worthy to rule, Arthur must retrieve King Atlan's trident. So a guy named Arthur must retrieve a magical weapon to rule a kingdom. Almost like I've heard this story somewhere before. Yeah, it's a really simple setup and story, but it's all about the execution. And the movie pulls it off with such style and flair that I think it stands out. The biggest thing being the visuals. Not only seeing some really cool, bright, colorful, beautiful worlds, but also some great action set pieces throughout the whole movie. And a lot of them are impressive and fun to watch. Also, James Wan does a lot of these one-take scenes, and they just look awesome on screen. The first action scene in the movie lets you know what you're in for, and they really just get better from there. The final battle at the end is one of my favorites because it's a giant epic scale battle with lots of moving parts, and it jumps from set piece to set piece, but it's never hard to tell what's going on, despite looking almost like a clusterfuck. And it's the perfect time to mention that all the underwater scenes have a different aspect ratio, letting you see more, which I think helps with these action set pieces. It doesn't feel so claustrophobic. It really just lets you take in the world and see as much as you can. Now, there are things that this movie does that other movies have done before that annoy me, but it pulls it off here pretty well, to where it's not really that big of an issue. Like, they visit a variety of locations, being Atlantis, other kingdoms, Italy, and whatnot. So this movie jumps around a lot, which normally annoys me. But here, I don't really seem to mind. It shows you enough to keep you intrigued before jumping to the next location. The only places I wish they stayed at more were Atlantis and the Hidden Sea. Also, with two villains in the mix, this movie could very easily feel crowded. But I think they were actually handled pretty well here, and are set up to be explored more in future sequels. Mainly Black Manta, because King Orm is the main threat here, but I think they balanced the two villains well enough and made them interesting enough to keep you watching. Also, there are exposition dumps and flashbacks throughout the whole movie, but they're pretty creative here. With the exposition dumps in particular, it's cool that it goes back in time and shows you what's being told, so you can see it instead of just hear it. Although the flashbacks are probably the weakest parts, because the actor playing young Arthur comes off so awkward and unintentionally hilarious. But it also kind of works for this movie, so it gets a pass. So really, it's the visuals, action, and fun and goofy nature of the movie that helps elevate it higher for me when compared to other comic book movies. It excels in other aspects, so it makes up for its shortcomings. It's a very simple movie and story, but I think it's done very well. It's pretty unique, and I can't help but respect it and enjoy it more. Also, I'm a big fan of James Wan, so that plays a part, and even though this is a completely different movie from what he's used to doing, I think he knocked it out of the park, and you can still tell that it's a James Wan movie. And I really can't wait to see what he does with the sequel. So, is this movie perfect? No, not by a long shot. And I've talked to several people in person about it, many of which didn't like it. They said they found it too goofy and dumb. But for me, I really like it. And I think it's one of DCEU's best movies. It's fun as hell, visually it's impressive, and the action is great. And I also think it's pretty funny, intentionally and unintentionally. I like seeing the underwater worlds like Atlantis and the other kingdoms, and can't wait to see them get further explored in the sequels. And despite characters acting and appearing different and the continuity errors, I can still watch this movie and have a blast. There's a lot of things to critique this movie for, and most of it's valid, but really, I don't care. It's a lot of fun. It's one of those movies where I can see why someone doesn't like it, and I can acknowledge that, but at the same time, I don't care and I really enjoy it myself. I'm trying to think of a good example here. The Boondock Saints, I guess? I've met people who love that movie and people who hate it. Probably not the best example, but leave a comment, let me know if you can think of a better one. But that's gonna do it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, go and drop a like on it. And go ahead and leave a comment, let me know, what do you think about Aquaman? Do you think it's a very strange and goofy and weird movie but still love it? Or do you think it is too dumb and stupid to take seriously? Leave a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
Take my advice, rookie. You ever fall for a woman? Make sure she's got balls.
That's a little gay.
Hold on.